Thank you all for joining us. Before I take a few questions, I'd like to say a few words about program changes to the operation of our Youth Connection Center. Last year, my administration expanded our Youth Connection Centers to operate year-round as opposed to just in the summertime. The purpose was to provide additional support and services to children that we knew were falling through the cracks and were potentially in harm's way being out on the street at unsafe times during the night. Since the implementation of the year-round centers, we have seen a dramatic decrease in the number of nighttime curfew violators, and we've successfully connected dozens of children with the support that they need. Now that we are moving along with the new school year, we're witnessing an increase in the number of daytime curfew violations, which has prompted my administration to adjust our tactics and to better meet the needs of children who are out on the streets, instead of at school getting a good education. Going forward, my administration will utilize one centralized nighttime curfew during the school year and expand to 2 during the summer. Meanwhile, we'll place an additional focus on daytime curfew violators by expanding our daytime operation to 2 centers during the school year. These daytime centers will work in partnership with the Department of Recreation and Parks, the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, city schools, and city police to ensure that daytime curfew violators are where they belong, which is in school. Let me reiterate, this is not about criminalizing our children. This is about reaching our children before they find themselves in a situation where the only option left is law enforcement. We're very encouraged by the early success of our Youth Connection Center, but I believe we have more work to do, and these common sense adjustments will help us to do our part to make sure our children are out of harm's way, and will help us to make sure that they're getting a good education. Now I'd like to turn things over to Angela Johnese, the Director of the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, who will provide some additional information about the adjustments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning. I'm Angela Johnese, the Director of the Mayor's Office on Criminal Justice. Since August of last year, the Mayor's Office on Criminal Justice has worked with the Department of Recreation and Parks, the Baltimore Police Department, city schools, and school police to operate 2 Youth Connection Centers, one on the east side at Collington Square and one on the west side at the Lillian Jones Recreation Center. Moving forward, we will continue year-round operations at Collington Square on the east side. That means we will be receiving young people on Friday nights and Saturday nights and on other weeknights if necessary. Lillian Jones will cease operations for the remainder of the school year beginning February 21st and will reopen in May on the Friday before Memorial Day to align with the curfew ordinance and the change between the school year and summertime curfew ordinance. The daytime curfew centers will be Solo Gibbs in Leadinghall and Greenmount Recreation Center. Working with the Department of Recreation and Parks, the centers will be staffed by Recreation and Parks staff along with youth connectors from the Mayor's Office on Criminal Justice, who will continue to assess young people and help make referrals to services and supports. And this will also allow us to increase capacity to meet with families and young people who have been found in violation of daytime and nighttime curfews. Thank you.
All right. Any questions?
Is it going to change costs to the city? This change in the program?
The costs?
Yeah.
I don't know if do you have the answer to that yet?
In terms of cost, because we're making an adjustment in operations, it sort of balances out between the staffing for Lillian Jones that currently staff the center on Friday night and Saturday night. So it's a shift in operations, and based on the budget that we receive for the Youth Connection Centers for this fiscal year, we will remain within that budget.
What kind of numbers are you seeing in the daytime?
In daytime curfews, we're seeing about 12 to 15 daytime curfews per week, whereas with nighttime curfews, we're seeing maybe 2 to 3 per week, sometimes 4. So we're definitely seeing more daytime curfews than nighttime curfews. And there's been an emphasis on some schools who have reached out about truancy in their area. And so we are we have identified recreation centers in the areas that can provide additional supports to those schools.
So just when you have a daytime curfew, what's the process? Does the kids stay at the recreation center the whole day or what?
No, we don't want the Youth Connection Center to become an alternative to school, so the Recreation Center and Connection Center will serve as a site to assess the young person and to engage school police or BPD in order to get the young person back to school, but to provide an additional layer of support and services and accountability to try to re-engage them in the school setting.
Was there an increase in the amount of daytime curfews that caused for this change?
With the amendment to the curfew in August, we've been the Mayor's Office on Criminal Justice has been capturing new data. So this is the first year that we've been capturing daytime curfews. So we would need to get data from years past to do a thorough assessment. But just looking at the data that we have access to related to daytime curfew violations versus nighttime curfew violations, and the supports that are needed by young people, we feel like this is an opportunity to continue the mission of putting additional supports in place.
Thank you very much, Angela. And for me, the fact that the schools are reaching out is another sign that they believe in what we're doing, that we're having success connecting young people to services. And when kids are out of school, we know that something is wrong. We know that it might be a problem that's going on in school, a problem that's going on in the house, and I'm just pleased that we're nimble enough and able to be responsive enough to deal with this issue, and that we have the track record that the community and the schools believe that we can be helpful in this way.
Mayor, obviously with new initiatives, there are growing pains, so to speak. What are some of the lessons that you've learned now that we have some months passed since the Connection Center's opened?
The biggest lesson is, if I want to influence youth behavior, I shouldn't be frustrated when the media turns it into a big controversy, because I think all of the publicity around the curfew. I mean, we saw a dramatic drop off. You know, and it was frustrating to me when I felt like it was being mischaracterized as we were trying to criminalize kids, and I was extremely frustrated. But I think all of the attention, whether I thought it was positive or negative attention, but all of that attention around this new curfew brought an awareness that, you know, if we had just passed it and started enforcing it, I don't think it would have been there. And then it turned out to be a wake-up call, I think, to a lot of parents and caregivers about what their responsibilities are with their kids. And it gave kids an understanding of, you know, kids need rules and boundaries. And I think that helped.
Mayor, the Board of Estimates approved 2 settlements.
So let me just say before we move on, are there any more curfew questions for Angela? If you don't mind, so she can.
I'm just curious, and it may be too early for you to have this data. Do you have a sense so far of how many kids have been diverted from the criminal justice process, as opposed to what would have happened prior to this program?
We're in the process of looking at the relationship between the curfew ordinance and juvenile arrests. We do know that juvenile arrests are continuing to decline across the city, and that is a trend that we saw before the curfew ordinance went into effect. And so the real data on that will be available in the coming weeks and months.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela. All
The
right.
Board of Estimates approved 2 settlements today in cases of plaintiffs suing the cops, police officers. Is it time to reevaluate the way the city deals with these cases and perhaps take these cases to trial?
I think we take a number of cases to trial. The settlement that are made represent a legal decision that's made by a team that looks at not just the facts surrounding the case, but also how we would be able to present that case in court. And not everything is cut and dry. And we win a lot of cases. We have to pay out judgments when we don't, and we avoid unnecessary spending of taxpayers' dollars on those suits when we think it would be I don't want to say a gamble, but we think that it would be in the city's best interest to settle. So I mean, every city does it. When there are cases that we believe that not only the facts are on our side, but the way that we would be able to present those facts, we go to trial. And when we're not confident, or when we believe that there's a better outcome, we look for settlement. It's not uncommon.
Are you concerned about juries? Is the city concerned about juries?
I don't want to say overly concerned.
One of the settlements is an officer who has now been involved in cases that have paid out $250,000 over 2 years. What do you think that the police department should do about these officers that keep getting sued and costing the city money?
So I think there are a lot of things that we can do, and I've been pressing the police department to look for ways. One, with I talked about with you before, the teachable moments, where we take a look at the facts surrounding the settlement and try to use it as instruction for officers in training as well as current officers. I also think that there is room for improvement in that probationary period. When a new officer starts, there's in that first year, we have an opportunity before the law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights kicks in for them to make some decisions about whether or not we think this person is right for the job. And I think we have to. I will say I think there's room for improvement in doing that serious evaluation during that first year, and to look for potential warning signs. Other than that, I think it's all about reinforcing the training and looking for more tools for the commissioner to deal with bad cops.
I don't know if we've asked you about this, but the FOP has come out against some of your proposals to reform this process, and you've been down to Annapolis. I mean, what are you seeing? Do you think these reforms will pass? How do you assess sort of the climate right now to achieve that change?
I think it's too early to make a real assessment of the climate. I mean, it's just been introduced. We've just started talking to people about it. I'm committed to working with the FOP and other statewide law enforcement, their organized labor representatives, to see if there's any common ground. I think it might take a second for them to realize what I think people understand across the country, which is the status quo is not it's not going to last. People are demanding change in Baltimore, across the state, across the country. People want to see a more level playing field between the community and the police, and there is a growing frustration and impatience with how jurisdictions, in Maryland included, deal with bad officers.
I'm just curious if you have a response to the FOP's suggestion in their statement in response to your proposed reforms, that it creates a second class of citizens out of police.
Now, the response that I have is I told our local FOP president that I'm very willing, if his membership wants to sit down in the same way that I had a public safety forum with community members, if they want to have a conversation about that, I'm very willing to do that. I want to hear from them. I want them to hear from me about why we've chosen the reforms that we're putting forward. I think they are common sense, and I think they are responsible. And I have asked them to look for ways that we can strengthen the system so we can protect both the community and the vast majority of the men and women who wear that uniform, who go to work every day, put their lives on the line, and are doing the right thing.
Just before we came down here, Council President Young said I guess he was disappointed that he hadn't learned about the background of this officer earlier. Do you think enough's being done between your administration and the other members of the Board of Estimates to let them know when these cases are coming up that they're going to be voting on?
I think we provide information to the council president when he and his team have asked for it. I think we've provided information to the press when they've asked for it. I think to a certain extent, I feel like this notion that that we're keeping information from the council president or anyone is unfortunately a made-up controversy, and maybe in 6 months there'll be some benefit to that that I'll see. But right now, it just seems like a distraction from the real work that's going on to improve police-community relationships. I mean, if anyone knows anything about settlements, you understand that you present them just like the judge or the jury would look at them, and that are the facts of that case. If people want other information, anybody, if the reason why the son knows about it is because point they asked and we gave him the information. We would have done the same thing to the council president. So to suggest because they didn't ask that we're shielding information or keeping him in the dark, I just think is a tabloidish stretch of the facts.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the son's story about the tax breaks and the effect on school aid, which showed that the city's lost money because, and I realize a lot of these deals were made before you were mayor. However, does this give you any pause in terms of the ongoing process of sort of giving out tax breaks to developers for
Don't let your personal opinion get mixed in with the objective news reporting that you're doing.
Any public policy class, any university.
Administering tax breaks to developments, does this give you pause? I mean, to look at that sort of where the city is technically losing school aid, and what's your reaction to that?
I think this is the first time in decades that Baltimore City is outpacing the rest of the state when it comes to economic growth. For me, that proves that our strategies are working. Baltimore is growing again. And the fact is that, while, some of us who are predisposed to be against incentives would like to characterize it as just downtown development, these projects are all over the city. And they're helping to grow the city. They're helping us to grow all over the city, whether it's Belvedere Square or Mondawmin. I mean, it's all over the city. But at the end of the day, it's wrong for Baltimore to be punished for doing exactly what he says he wants the rest of the state to do, which is to grow. On the one hand, a month ago we were a city that was in decline, and this month we're too rich for school aid. It just doesn't make sense. I think it's false to say that just because we have high taxes and deficits that we have no choice but to cut education. When I became mayor, you all know what I faced: high property taxes, staggering deficit, both short-term and long-term deficits. But we made the tough calls and made the tough decisions. I refused to kick the can down the road. We cut property taxes with additional relief coming. We eliminated more than half of the city's structural deficit and closed short-term deficits while increasing funding to education by 20%. So don't tell me you can't do it. They made a choice. And I think it's possible to meet the budget challenges without cutting education. My administration has shown that it can be done. And furthermore, while I think, for some people who are predisposed not to support incentives, it might be interesting to cast this story as it's the incentives that are causing, that's the reason why it's the education cuts. The majority, or 61% of the cuts, are due to decisions made by the governor that have nothing to do with tax incentive and that keep education funding flat. I'll say that again. The cuts, 61%. Are coming directly from the governor's choices. The rest of the cuts are due to the existing formula, which inadvertently punishes Baltimore for growing. And it inadvertently does it because we've outpaced the state, and that's how it's done in relation.
Mayor,
so while people who are predisposed not to like these things, like to cast it as the incentives are doing it, the reality and the truth of the matter is it's the governor's decisions that cause the majority of the cuts.
The city's contribution to the school system is relatively flat over, well, as far as you look back to the last 5, 10, 15 years, the city could increase its contribution to make up for any reduction that is coming from the state of Maryland. Has that been contemplated?
We've taken a look at education funding. I would beg to differ with the description or the characterization is flat. I believe we.
Well, adjusted for inflation, it's certainly not. It's about 200 to 220, whatever, a year. It's a very small. It's the smallest portion of their aid.
So I will say that we continue to make significant investments in public education. I'll also say that we continue to work with Dr. Thornton and the school board to find ways to make sure that we are keeping pace with not just inflation, but also the school's needs, and work with them on doing what I did, which is to create efficiencies so we're able to put more money into the classroom.
Delegate McIntosh suggested earlier this week that the city, the state, the teachers' unions, and business leaders should sit down together and come up with a plan to address this $35 million with everybody chipping in some way. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think we're incredibly fortunate in Baltimore to have Delegate McIntosh as the chair of the Appropriations Committee. I think she's smart and thoughtful and committed to Baltimore's kids, and it's a process, and I support whatever conversations she wants to have, and if we need to be a part of it, we'll be a part of it.
One more guy.
What do you think about the? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
No, it's a stupid question.
Mine's very wonky.
Come on. Wonky or stupid? Which one am I going with?
Is it Grammy related?
It's not Grammy.
Oh, is yours Grammy related?
Yes.
I kind of want to hear the answer to that question.
Were the Grammys as depressing to you as they were to the rest of the country?
I think for anybody over 40.
Annie Lennox, man, hit it out of
Oh yeah.
Well,
What are you watching?
Well, I'll say
It
this.
seems like the song between Annie Lennox and Sam Smith,
Absolutely.
with the exception of Yellow, were just. You just wanted to jump off a cliff somewhere.
I think there were a few little nuggets for that provided joy to those who were over 40. I think the rest of it is a mystery to many in my age group, including some of the outfits. But I think you didn't see the outfits.
I'm older than you are, substantially.
You enjoyed the whole thing.
Absolutely.
See,
I like to listen to
everyone says you're cooler than me. This is confirmation. Confirmation. All right, do you want to ask a wonky question?
Yeah, I'm just curious, when you say that 61% of the cuts to the education funding are things of the governor's own choosing, do you mean his decision to leave inflation flat? Is that primarily what you're referring to?
Yes, and the cuts in the, CGI?
The geographic.
Yeah.
GCI.
You know what I'm talking about. The geographic index. Alrighty, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's like 14 million.
So Annie Lennox was on.
Cities where